Hello guys, welcome back. If you are new here, please hit the subscribe button. Okay, we're going to continue with our application, the one we've been building in the past 5-6 videos. In this video, we'll be covering the company's controller, right? So what we're gonna do is create that file, company controller.ts, and then we're going to implement a few functions: get company, maybe also add company, add a new company, also maybe here get companies, right? Add a new company, update company. Okay, so this is the 4 functions that we are going to implement, right? So let's start with the simplest ones and do this. So first of all, we're going to import the request, the response, and the next function from Express, and then we're going to export function called get company, and it's gonna be an asynchronous function, and then in here we're gonna have the usual response. And we're gonna use the same signature as this one, so get company, it's gonna be companies here, add new company, and update company. Why did I remove it? Okay, so this is the 4 functions that we're going to implement, right? Okay, so the other thing is, if you are in this, so anyone who tries to access this or the company route must have logged in, right? So we are actually going to grab the user ID, because remember, the company has to belong to a user, right? So when you add a company, actually let me start with this. So when you add a company, you need to attach the user ID on the company object, or on the company document, right? So that whenever the user logs in and tries to get their companies, we're going to use their user ID to know the companies that belong to them, right? So let's do this. So let's start with this one, and then here we're just gonna pass the error. So what we're essentially going to do is we're gonna say new company, and then it's gonna be an object. We're gonna take whatever data that has been sent from the client or from the front end, and then we're also going to attach the user ID on this new company that we are trying to add. So where are we getting this user ID? We are getting it from the user object that we have attached. Remember, we did the declaration merging in here, so we know on the request object we have this user, and then the user has this ID. So we are trying to establish a relationship between the company and the user. So the user ID is going to be user ID, like this. So we know when we add this company will belong to someone, and then this someone is gonna be identified by this ID. And then what you're gonna do now is save company, right? Or saved, await, and we're gonna import companies. Let me see in we're in the models company. Let me do it like this. Come back here and try to import it, and we are creating a new document, right? So we can essentially pass in the new company like this, and if not saved, we can throw an error here and say error. Remember our error controller, and say bad request. So something must have happened if we fail to save this company, and say failed to add new company. And then if we succeeded creating a new company, we can easily 201 for created successfully, and we send back a new message, a message saying company was created or added. Let's say company was added, and then later we send back the saved company, the company we just added, and then also with the status or the success flag set to be true. So this is basically it. So here what we are essentially doing is that we are establishing a relationship between the user and the company. So when this user, when this company gets added to the database, it will have the ID of an existing user. So whenever this user tries to perform this or tries to get these companies, we're essentially going to use their ID and fetch every company that has this user ID. So that way you won't be able to access companies that don't belong to you, right? Yeah. So now that we have implemented the add company, we can do get company and get companies. It will make sense. So get company essentially means you have to provide something that we can use to uniquely identify the company you're trying to get, right? In most cases, you'd provide would have like the company ID through the parameter, right? So wait, let's actually have it in here. Let's create the company routes so that you see where we're gonna get the company ID from. So I'm just gonna copy this, paste it here, and here's gonna be company controller, get companies, get company, update company, and we have add new company. So here get company, and then we're gonna try to get the company by ID. So when you specify with this semicolon here, it means you are trying to pass an additional information that we can use to get that company. So we're going to pass in a company ID. So to match this route here, it means you also have to pass in the company ID. So for something that doesn't have, let me copy this line. So for something that does not have this company ID, it means we are trying to get everything. We are trying to get all the companies. And then for put, also for updating, you need to specify the company ID, right? And delete, we're not gonna have a delete. We're gonna have post and add new company. So let me have them like this. So we have a get company. Obviously we need the ID. Get companies, we don't need any sort of identification to use to get those companies, because we're gonna use the user ID to get those companies. And to update, you need to specify which company you are trying to update. And post, you don't need to specify any ID because the company doesn't even exist. You are trying to make it exist, right? So back to the controller, right? What is this? Let's delete this, we don't need them. So back to the company controller, get company. So since we said since this function will only get executed on this router, right? So when the ID exists, we know this company, this get company function will be executed, right? So we know for sure that the get company ID, the company ID here, we can be able to access it in here. We can access it like this, request, and then from the params we can get the company ID from there. So what else do we need? We also need the user ID, because we want to make sure the person or the user who's trying to access this company is actually the company that belongs to them, right? So now we can do company and await companies dot find, and we can say company ID, right? So the company ID is this, and the user ID must match this one, even though we can just leave it like this. If throw an error, or we can say 404 company not found, else send back the data that was found. Message company details, data is the company, right? And success is true. Here we're going to simplify it again by simply passing the error onto our error handler. Even with the get companies, we're going to implement something similar like this. So I'm just going to copy it, and we don't have to get the company ID here, so it means this line is no longer important. We're trying to get every company that matches this user ID, and then maybe let's also try to change this to companies. There's an error here. Okay, and we could try to implement pagination, right? Pagination. So typically when you're doing pagination, you specify the number of items you want to be returned per request and the page you are on, or the page number you are on. So we're gonna have the per page, and these won't actually be parameters, but then they're gonna be in the query object, and then we check if we have the per page, value. If we do not have it, actually if we do have it, let's pass it into a number, and then if we don't have it, by default we're gonna use 10. So we're going to return 10 for every request. We're going to return 10 companies per request by default, and we're gonna say page. Also we can paste this here, and so also for page we're gonna do the same thing. Check it if it exists. If it does, by default we are always going to And as you can see here, we have errors, right? So I'm simply going to do this hack string and a string. So this company instance here, we're gonna change the methods to perform pagination, right? So we're going to use two functions, skip and limit. So limit, what it essentially does is it limits the number of documents you return per query, right? So for us is this value, so it's the per page. And we have also a function called skip. So the skip function essentially is going to skip the number of documents, right? You specify the number of documents you want it to return. So I'm gonna give you an example here of how it works, right? So how these two functions actually work. So when you say limit, you say you are limiting the number of documents that get returned. So if you say 5, you're only going to return these, right? Okay, who is 4 now? So if you say 5, you're going to return only these 5 documents, right? So we'd assume these numbers are the documents. And skip, you essentially specify the number of documents that must be skipped. So let's say you want the number of documents returned per page must be 2, right? So you are on page 1. How many items you want to be returned to, and you are on page 1. And then if you move to page 2, it means you must keep these values and return these. So that's what the value we have to pass in here. So we have to pass in the page -1 and multiply by per page. So if by default is page 1 minus 1 is 0, so multiply by any number is gonna be 0. So if you are on page 1, essentially it's not going to skip any value, right? So if you move to page 2, so it's going to be 2 minus 1 multiplied by 2. So it's 2 minus 1 multiplied by 2, which means is 2. So it's going to skip 2 and move to this 2 here, right? So that's how basically pagination works. I hope you get it. And then so here we're going to return the page. And we move on to, let me remove this. How many functions have you implemented? Get company, get companies, add company, and update company. Also add update company is nearly the same as add new company. I'm just gonna copy this, paste it here, and try to make sure that everything is in order. So update company. So update company, yeah, updated company. Actually, let me just call it company. And to ensure that this user ID does not get changed, we attach it again here. And then this company, we need to find one and update. Find one and update, right? So we need to find this company that we are trying to update, right? Remember, in the routes here, we specified that whatever company you want to update, you must specify the ID, right? The company's ID. So constant company ID, and we're trying to get it from params and company ID. So we are going to try to find the company ID using this company ID, and also we want to make sure that the user who's trying to update the company is the one that has access to this company. And then we pass in the object that we want to update, right, which is the company, and we want the new company that was updated to be returned. So maybe I'm gonna say updated, and I don't think, okay, and then we're gonna say fail to update company is updated, and updated success, company was updated. Okay, let's go through it again. We grab the ID, the user ID, the company ID, and we create a new company with the details that want to be. So we grab, these are the values that want to be updated, and we ensure that even if there was a new user ID that was attached to this body, we replace it by ensuring that we attach this user to this object. So there's no way that a user would try to update a company with a different user ID, because that will cause data inconsistencies on our database. So if this user tried to add a new user ID to this company, we're still ensuring that the user ID does not get changed. And to update that company, we want to make sure that the company exists, and if it exists, also the user ID belongs, or the user ID has the privilege to update that company. And then we pass in the data that we want to update is this company, and we return the company that was updated. So essentially this company, the updated here, will have the new details, right? And if this fails, obviously fail to update, and if not, we have managed to update our company. So yeah, that's basically it. And what we need to do now is to go and test these functions, right? So I'm gonna open Postman. That's where we test our things. And but before we do that, I need to ask to run it, give it a few minutes, and we should be up connected. So what we're gonna do is create a new folder here called maybe company, right? And it's gonna inherit the, so for authorization, we're going to inherit the token from this collection here. So this token here is gonna be inherited by this. So let's go into companies and add, let's try to say get company. Obviously we don't have any company, right? Or let's try to log in. Let's see, let's log in. User does not exist. Oh, from the previous video, remember we deactivated this user, so we no longer able to log in with these details. So it means we need to register a new user here, say new testing 1 2 3 4, name new. So now we have a new user here, and then we're gonna copy this token, come to this collection and paste it here, save. So we know every route or request in here will have this token attached, right? So in the get company here, we're gonna do get companies. We also still have a problem here. This does not exist. Okay, we have a problem. We have these routes, but we did not import them in here. So I'm going to copy this line here and do company routes, and copy this here, come down here after users, companies, and paste that route. So we should be able to make a request to these. Go back to Postman. Let's try to get companies. details, we have an empty array, which means we do not have any company or companies that belong to the logged in user, right? So what we need to do is we need to add a new company, body and row. We are using JSON here. There's a lot of company model. Let's see what's needed. We have a name, company size, email, and website. User ID does not have to be specified by us. We also have a location, and location is an object that has a country and a city. City is not required, but the country is. So okay, let's go ahead. Name of the company is Facebook. So now we have the name. So this is the details that are needed for you to add a new company: the name, the location, and then in the location is a company, and you can also add a city, the company size, the email, the website, and the about, right? So but first I actually need us to remove this field, because I think we specified that it was needed. So if we try to post this, okay, this is gonna be add new company, save. So if we send this, it shouldn't be able to do this. So there's an error, so it means there was an exception that was thrown. So company validation failed. So the required, and then the path was about. So the about field that we just removed is needed. So if I return it back and send, and company was added, so now this particular user, the one that is logged in, has created a new company. So we can also do able this company that we are handling is in Nigeria. Oh no. Able and send. So we have two companies, right? So we can save this request, close this one, close, save changes, and in here again it means, so for us to test another thing, we can test get companies, right? Get companies, and we don't have to specify anything, and we're supposed to get all the companies. And then remember, we have pagination using query. So per page we can say we want only one. So we are assuming that we are on page 1 and we only want one company to be returned. And as you can see here, if I close this object here, we do not have any other object because we used the per page to be 1. And if we say page 2, we should not be getting any data, or we actually do, or because we are returning per page we are returning 1, so page 2 is actually going to return the last one. So if I say per page we return 2, and we do not have anything, so our pagination is working correctly. So let me remove the pagination values here and send, and get the ID of this company and use it here and see if we can get the company details, and we do. So now the only thing that is remaining, actually let me copy this part here and create a new request and paste this and say this one is get company, and save, send. Still cool. So now what we need is an update company, put row JSON. So update, what are we updating? We're updating a company of the specified ID, right? So let's get this company. So the name of the company is Facebook, right? So let's try to update the name. we are updating the name only, right? So we are changing the name from Facebook to Meta Inc. Let's send, and the company was updated, and as you can see, the name now is Meta, and all the values that we did not provide when we were trying to update remains unchanged. So if you provide the email, say email is what, Facebook is gonna be meta at test.gmail .co.za. When we send, those values must be changed. So this one didn't change because it was the previous one, but then the email has changed. So this means this means our update function, just like any other function that we have implemented in this video, work. So this means this is the end of this video. So I hope you guys enjoy this. Yeah, thank you. I'll see you guys in the next one.